6:37, and I want to be mindful of everyone's time as we move through this. Guess we can get started. I think we've already kind of made introductions other than Ms. Sandra and Mr. Joe Seconder.
I haven't made mine.
Sorry, Lily. I'm
I
sorry,
fixed my
Lily.
hair. I put the glasses on. Hi, everyone. My name is Lily Pabian. I'm the executive director of We Love Buford Highway. High. We are a 501c3 charitable nonprofit here. And, it's been a tough hit on particularly our immigrant communities along Buford Highway. As you guys all know, this area has been here for 40 plus years, carved and shaped by immigrants. And, part of our mission is preserving the multicultural, it is our mission of preserving the multicultural identity of this place for Atlanta and for the South and what that means. Yeah, it's been really, really hard. And I'll just share very quickly that we are actually working on a brand extension to specifically to help serve our immigrant-owned business entrepreneurs and businesses here on Buford Highway through the Buford Highway Business League. It's a 501c6. We are in the process of doing the framework and sort of the heavy lifting, but we will certainly keep everyone, particularly DeKalb County, our friends there, with the rollout, and we will have a board and all of that. So we're working on that because that's huge landscape of preservation is our businesses, right? And people talk about our restaurants and all that. So, but thank you so much again for hosting, and thank you for giving us this time.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Mr. Joe Seconder, are you there? Ms. Chandra Brown.
Good morning.
Good morning. Could you introduce yourself to us, please?
My name is Chandra Brown. I'm a small business owner of a automotive brokering business in Doraville. And I just wanted to see what kind of products that you offer for small business. So I just wanted to see what was going on in my neighborhood.
Okay. So this particular business session was kind of geared towards around the restaurant industry. We wanted to hear from them. This is going to be the first of many. You're more than welcome to hang out, but this conversation, I think it's going to lean a little bit more towards the restaurants. And we can talk about maybe some of the resources that we will have available if you want to hang around for this.
Thank you. I do.
Okay, very good. Okay. Gary, Linda?
Yes.
Hi, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, a small introduction?
My son is the main operator of a restaurant in Dunwoody Village. It is a Mexican restaurant called Chapito's Azteca Grill. We took it over January of 2020.
Okay, very good.
And we've been able to, during the pandemic, we've been able to successfully pivot to takeout and delivery with very, very limited indoor seating. And we expanded our patio and took advantage of the city of Dunwoody's patio expansion efforts. And we've survived so far very well, and we're looking forward to better times.
Okay, very good. Okay, so it looks like, let me see, looks like we have more representatives than actual restaurant owners here right now and operators. So we may have to pivot because some of the questions that we wanted to talk about and things we want, it was more directly towards restaurant owners or providers. But maybe Mr. Benda, maybe some of these will pertain to you, but we'll also tie in some of these executive directors and some of the things that they've heard as well. So in saying that, just generally, how has the COVID-19 pandemic currently impacted the businesses? I mean, are you all seeing a lot of layoffs of employees that you've heard about? What about businesses closing? Have you had a lot of closures or temporary closures or reduced hours? So if you could kind of just talk about that, exactly just in general, how how has the COVID impacted your restaurant? And I will start with you, Mr. Benda, if you'd like to speak.
Yes, we've actually seen almost the opposite. We did have to let go of some obvious elements of the business that, since we weren't having dine-in, we didn't need as many dishwashers or busboys, but we've had the opposite effect. We need to hire more staff,
Okay.
and we can't find, I mean, there seems to be a disconnect between the number of jobless one reads about and targeting folks for part-time jobs, full-time jobs, whatever. I mean, we could hire in every position from manager all the way down, and we've had a real trouble finding people that are willing to work from not only the Dunwoody area, but, you know, we've advertised in Doraville, Brookhaven, Sandy Springs, and so forth. So that if the county could do something to, you know, to be kind of a jobs as restaurants rebound and start hiring again, if we could find a vehicle upon which people who are interested in part-time work could register, and employers like ourselves could tap into that.
Okay. So do you think that it's hard finding people because they're still afraid of COVID, of catching it, or is it something else?
I think we've seen the number of opportunities or places where we can post jobs are quite limited. Obviously, there are net services or companies like Indeed and places like that you can post, but they don't seem to be, the public doesn't seem to be aware of how to find these kind of jobs. And we see a lot of people that we'll talk to and say, well, we didn't realize that people were actually hiring. And here we are trying to hire, and we're having trouble finding people that have a genuine interest and are not looking, you know, everybody wants that $100 an hour job or the $50 an hour job.
Right.
And we get that they may not want to work for $15 an hour in a restaurant. But, you know, we still maintain there are a number of people. There's a pool of people out there that if we could find out where they are, we could hire quite a few of them.
Okay.
Jerry, have you thought of just doing something like going to Next Door Neighbor? That app is pretty prevalent in District 1. Really gets into all the neighborhoods. Have you tried doing a job posting there?
No, well, we haven't done that. We've reached out to the local high schools to see if there are job training programs and stuff, and we really haven't gotten much response at all. They haven't really sent us people. You know, we've told them that we could train people who might be interested in work in the hospitality industry as a career, that we could train them, give them skills while they're still in school.
Okay.
All right. Lily, would you like to add to that? Could you tell us a little bit about what you're seeing from your organization?
Well, early on, we just saw just a lot of everyone just sort of freezing on how they're going to figure out their pivot. I think as we move into the sort of relief mode and turning the corner a little bit, we are seeing, I mean, certainly we've had restaurants close just out of their just lack of business. I mean, we saw a huge dip in Chinatown in that area, as much as 60% over the summer. And some of the stalls had to shut down, which was really sad to see, you know. But we are seeing, you know, sort of these hints of people, you know, it's reviving. You know, we're very resilient, and you kind of figure out ways to readjust and which knobs to turn and all that. So. And very creative ways too. We see a lot of restaurants even partnering, you know, some, like for instance, Chom Chom, they had space and they started highlighting Mamak's menu, you know, just to kind of help them, because Mamak is a very popular menu, the niche, but the space was just too small. So there's a complexity between, you know, people wanting to keep themselves safe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, typically in our communities, you have multi-generationals living together. So you definitely want to make sure people are safe. So, but then also being able to keep staff on and But to Jerry's point, I do see signs, hiring signs, and people are posting it on their, windows or whatever. But Jerry, if you have any job posts, what kind of job? I'm curious just curious, because we are tapped into a lot of working community members that have become, jobless. So I'd love to connect, and perhaps we can help share that for you and give those opportunities out.
Sure, that would be great. It would be great. I mean, we're really hiring all positions because we've completely renovated the restaurant. We actually, we were able during the shutdown for a few months take advantage, and we knew we had to renovate the restaurant, and we did it pretty seamlessly without losing business because as we pivoted the takeout and delivery. But now as we hope to be able to expand our in-person dining, and as the weather gets better, our expanded patio, we really have all kitchen help, back of the house and front of the house, all positions.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah. So I'll put my email address in the chat, or if Tara, you want to if you're going to send, connect us all through email, whatever afterwards. But, so we did, but I think Jerry makes a really good point. What we've been experiencing as well is you're constantly having to reset and then mobilize, and that is really straining for businesses that don't have, if your resources are depleted or whatever. I mean, as a business owner, you're wearing like 50 hats. You're having to always, sort of readjust. And that pivoting is not just a one-time thing, it's a continuous thing. And so how does, even from a customer perspective, we've had a lot of issues where customers were not wearing their masks, or coming in and not being very nice and patient with, the pivoting that has to happen, so there's just a lot of degrees, but I think things are starting to sort of stabilize. But again, it's the unknown. So what's going to come, what is another challenge that they're going to have to face? I think early on also, we heard a lot of people, businesses not even being able to have access to meat. So you saw a lot of restaurants weren't able to sell steak, or, like for the fajitas, for the tacos, the carne asada, whatever, because the bigger names were getting access to that and getting better prices. So I haven't heard that as much over the past, 3-4 months. So I'm hoping that things are starting to turn the corner. But that's the reasoning why we want to build this 501c6, to really facilitate. There's a disconnect. When we talk about civic engagement and all of that, there is a disconnect. And how do we work collectively and really, for us, the best place to start is getting our businesses collectively together and really build from that peer-to-peer, all the benefits of chambers and associations, but on a smaller, more local level scale.
So I'll say that when it comes to pivoting, as you mentioned, there's a place actually off of Peachtree Industrial where it has a grease trap, and originally it was a catering for universities and events and movie studio activities. They've changed that model, and now they have different chefs that come in and actually lease space, and then they have a provider like DoorDash come along and actually do the food delivery. Have you guys seen any other activity like that, or is that just the only spot I've noticed that? And Lewis, this would be even for you to chime in on that one, since I know you have some operations that deal with restaurants.
Okay, and there I have a bakery in Powers Ferry. The bakery is suffer a little bit on the beginning of the pandemic, but after 2 or 3 months, they return in the same level like it was before. Okay. The restaurant didn't. The restaurant, you have to be closed for almost 3 months, and we are considering to shut down because it's not picking up. The restaurant is a small restaurant called Kebabs in Powers Ferry. And we try to do a food delivery and try to improve the business in the other way, but it's not picking up much there. For the bakery, it's working pretty good. You do some sandwiches and this stuff is doing good for the bakery. But for the restaurant, it's a barbecue place. It's not doing so well.
Gotcha.
So, Mr. Michael Starling, would you like to add to that, add to the discussion? What are you seeing on your end from the restaurant?
Yeah, I would agree with, I've heard from many of our restaurants that now that they're back open, and they're certainly not back to, to full capacity. They're probably still down 60, 70, they're down 20 to 30%. And until, full indoor dining comes back, that's probably going to remain. But they're all having the same troubles with finding workers. A lot of it is, I think it is a disconnect between, where people are looking, but there's also competition now with Walmart, Target, grocery stores, Amazon. They pay well, they have benefits, and people are making, the choice to work in those types, even if it's at an Amazon delivery. So there's been that sort of shift of where people are shopping.
Mm-hmm.
That's impacting what the workforce as well. So we have heard that from almost every restaurant. The ghost kitchen, I think that's what you're talking about, Commissioner, sort of the idea that and we've had restaurants open in the past year. Surprisingly, we've had 4 or 5 restaurants open. Most of them had a big part of their plan was for delivery to begin with. So they saw that this is an opportunity to come in to second or third generation restaurant space cheaper. So they already had that idea, and I think the idea of ghost kitchens, people who are opening restaurants specifically for delivery, is something that's going to be growing. And there's actually a number, I forget the who's doing it, but there's a number of fairly large new ghost kitchens that are coming into the market, and they're building from scratch with the entire idea that people come and pick up, or they're using DoorDash and Uber Eats. That's, we think, looking at some of our older strip retail shopping centers where restaurants are already having a hard time competing because people just aren't looking as much for that kind, at least in Dunwoody. They're looking for, they want to place an experience, and some of our strip shopping centers are struggling. Right. We think that might be long-term an opportunity to reposition those restaurants into something more like a ghost kitchen, or really focused on delivery from the beginning.
Okay.
Let me ask, piggyback off of that. So how do you think these ghost kitchens, especially if they're long-term, how do you think that's going to impact your local economy in terms of, foot traffic and people having to be there in order to make their business successful? So, how do you see that playing out in the long term?
Yeah, it's going to be more competition, right? So I think you're going to have, almost like retail is becoming, you have retail that's convenience, and then you have retail that's experiential.
Right.
I think you're going to have the same thing for restaurants. So if you're, in a mixed use development that's walkable, that's it feels good to hang out, those places will do very well. And then I think you're going to have others that are specifically for more takeout. So yeah, I don't run a restaurant. It would seem to me to be the hardest thing in the world to do. You are dealing with so many difficult situations. It is amazing to watch the entrepreneurs who continue to come forward and say, we have a vision, we have a dream, we want to do this. I don't think there's much we can do about the ghost kitchen idea. I think, COVID has accelerated things that were already happening, people shopping differently, people eating differently. I think we're going to have to find a way to harness, at least we see it in Dunwoody, harnessing both. We need to be a place for both, because those are, the kitchens, those are good jobs. Those entrepreneurs, that's sort of where we're heading, at least a portion of the market. So we need to find a place for them. And I think all of our communities, we can find a place for those ghost kitchens. to operate. That's a good tax base. Those are good jobs. You just really are missing that in-person dining. That's really the only difference.
Right.
In some ways, they're more efficient and probably more economically viable for entrepreneurs to operate
Mhm.
like
Do you-
that.
Do you think there's any needs for code changes for something like that? Or do you think the existing zoning would allow just a regular restaurant and it wouldn't make a difference between a restaurateur and a catering facility?
Yeah, I'm not sure. We haven't had one specifically. I think it should be something we all look at to make sure we're not putting up impediments. We always find that when things change, that we have things in our code that don't relate to the new reality.
Mhm.
I think that would be interesting to look at.
Mr. Joe Seconder, would you like to add to this? What are you seeing in your community?
Hey, Joe Second here at Dunwoody Council. I'm at-large public citizen. You talk about trying to find people, connect workers to work. I'll say this from an information systems technology perspective. I work for a large enterprise software vendor that sells recruiting applications and stuff, and it's about engaging and finding those people where they are. So I would challenge as well those folks that are looking for people to really leverage social media as much as you can to go out and make sure you're targeting that market. Yeah, you may have to pay for a few ads, but that can be very effective. Instagram, what are the mediums that workers are looking at? Where are they? Go where they are today. So I see that, and back to the what Michael Starling was mentioning about great places to eat and so on, and the experience. We have one restaurant here in Dunwoody that was prophetic, and they removed car spaces. They removed car spaces in front of their restaurant before the pandemic, maybe about 4 of them. And they made it lovely, a nice seated area. It made it very, it wasn't just some chairs looking out over a sea of asphalt. They created lovely wooden surroundings. They put in little evergreen trees. They have lighting. They put music, nice wooden chairs, and then they went ahead and got a whole bunch of outdoor light, heating lamps, and the covered shades. So they really made a space out of use of that parking lot. So I would challenge other public officials to look at their code and zoning requirements for minimum parking requirements. We remove minimum parking requirements in Dunwoody, and so on. So you think about just using space for people. So think about being creative of parking lots, available space, pop-ups going out where the community is. We see food trucks going out to neighborhoods, engaging them as well, because people still want to engage, but you want to be respectful for social distancing and understanding the environment. So that's just a couple of my thoughts, just speaking at-large citizen as well.
No, Joe, thank you. Those are good comments. The parking requirements can be pretty onerous, and if you're a small business right now in a small little strip plaza, your customers sometimes park right in front of your door. But if you could allocate 1 or 2 parking spaces for that outdoor dining component, that might be the thing that kind of pulls people back into your business. So that's really good to hear that.
Yeah, Robert, just to kind of also dovetail, because it just depends on the city or the locale, whether is it a suburban strip mall kind of setting. Still, you can work on that. But if it's more of that older inner city kind of traditional space where you may have had, you're right in front of a road with a very small sidewalk. So I think Atlanta had to modify their code to say, okay, well, we could take a couple of those parking spaces away as well. But I believe there's permitting involved, and it can be fairly onerous. But just they can do these. They're called parklets and pop-ups, where you just create, go out to do a couple of spaces in front of you, and just it's a pop-up, tactical urbanism, just using that creative use of space and make it almost like a little festival.
Great idea. Great idea. Okay.
So from your all's perspective, what are some of your cities or some of your restaurants that you're seeing their most pressing needs like right now that they're asking for, that they're needing?
Well, I'll just jump in. So, you know, what I've been hearing a lot is just the extra expenses of masks. Still, the PPEs are the cost of that for particularly the smaller businesses, because they're constantly getting the disposable ones, and so those items and sanitizers and thermometers, I mean, all that stuff is still, it just had added costs for them, for their staff. So I do know that that would be really helpful if they were able to take that off their line item.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Lewis, have you seen anything in your business model that is sort of an unanticipated cost or hindrance right now?
Yeah, the cost to prevent the spread of COVID, it's taking a big problem to us. For example, to us have to reduce the number of the table in our business. It's necessary, but it's bad because on Saturday and Sundays when you have a lot of people going there, a lot of clientele, we cannot offer the space to them. During the week, you have tables empty, but on the weekends, you don't have table enough. Then to have this option to have some tables outside could help a lot. And you're trying to figure it out how to work faster and to provide a good quality of service. But it's sometimes it's difficult to have. The same way you are training our employees to treat the clientele with a safe position, to keep distance and using different kind of material, disposable materials that increase our costs. But the price you are having to pay to continue in business there. And I believe these incentives the government is giving to us, the PPP and the other options, it's helping a lot to keep in business. Because if you don't have this kind of incentive or to bring some more money to the business, sometimes it's difficult to keep the doors open.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of piggyback what you were saying. So how exactly are you all balancing that? So if you are having to reduce the number of tables, that means less customers that you are having. But now you have these added expenses of, you know, PPE and things like that. So how are you balancing that? You know, how are you making that work?
Yeah, for the restaurant business owner, you have to be so creative. You are working on our employees' schedule to try to maximize the number of the guys I have on the where you have more clientele, and reduce the maximum as I can when it's very slow. And in the other way, it's very difficult to keep our employee motivated with less hours in some shift and more hours in the other ones, to work harder on the weekends. It's very difficult to have this situation. Well, sometimes the partners have to be working on the weekends because the employees don't want to go. Even they are making more money, but they don't want to be every Saturday or Sunday working there, because it's hard, because you don't have that such tables. You have a lot of people waiting, complaining. It's very stressful to work on the weekends when you cannot offer the better service to the client. But you are trying to survive, that I can tell you. You are trying to survive it as best as you can, reducing costs. And the food price, I don't know if you can see that it's increasing. Sometimes it's very difficult because you cannot put this cost in your price, because the clients start to complaining about it. It's a challenge. I can tell you, it's a challenge.
Okay. Mr. Benda, you have anything to add to that?
No, I think, let me, out of full disclosure, my day job is I'm an attorney in my law firm. I'm managing partner of of a law firm, and we specialize in the hospitality industry. We represent scores or hundreds and hundreds of restaurants, both from national chains all the way down to mom and pop organizations, or mom and pop restaurants. I see the biggest problem that I hear in the restaurant industry, the local restaurant industry, is rent relief. When the pandemic started and restaurants were forced to shut down, I would say 100% of restaurants did not get letters from their landlords saying, okay, you don't have to pay rent. And so the rent obligations was weighing so heavily on restaurant operators, knowing that they weren't able to pay because they didn't have the revenue stream, but knowing that they had not reached any kind of agreement with their landlords. And we've been able to assist numbers of restaurants in working out deferral agreements, but very few landlords were actually abating rent. They were just deferring it, kicking the can down the road. A lot of them were giving 2 and 3 month reduced rent, but the restaurant owners had to pay it back. And the garden variety or deferral agreement, when these were entered into last spring, everybody thought, I'm talking last April and May, everybody thought the pandemic would be over by the end of the summer.
Right.
So we saw the payback period start as early as September, and the lion's share began January 1 of this year. And our phone's been ringing off the hook from people saying, we can't, our landlords are after us. We just can't afford. Can we to pay the deferred right now? Can we renegotiate? And the landlords pretty much are saying no. The landlords are saying, go out, go get another PPP loan, because a lot of the landlords were requiring restaurant owners to apply for a PPP loan in order to just get any kind of deferral. So yeah, getting masks and supplies is a problem, sure, but the elephant in the room, I should say, is rent. And I foresee in the next 6 months, after the second round of PPP loans are distributed and spent, that there's going to be another wave of restaurant closures, because people are just, the landlords are getting impatient, but certainly the court systems run quite slowly in terms of evictions and so forth. I don't know if the county could do any kind of eviction moratorium, so to speak, for people in the restaurant industry. I think that'd probably be very difficult to craft legislation that would be effective. But to me, that's the biggest problem that restaurants are facing right now, is how to pay the deferred rent.
So you think what's happening right now is just, it's just temporary, and something else big is about to happen pretty soon? It's some more closures are gonna happen pretty soon.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So what I'm saying is, in other words, you said that you think there's gonna be another big wave of closures that's gonna be coming.
Jerry, you think there's going to be another round of business closures related to rent, business owners that are not able to pay the rent? That's basically the question.
Yes, that's what I'm saying, that I'm seeing, and this really affects more of the small businesses, the franchise operations of national chains. I'm hearing from franchisees that their sales are just not back, as was said earlier on this session, that sales are down 20-30%. You can't make up what you don't have. And if people have got $20,000 of rent deferrals, the landlords are expecting to get that paid. And some landlords just don't have the ability to grant any more deferrals, is what I'm finding. And it's a scary situation for many operators out there. They're just hoping and praying that people will come back, but all reports indicate that could be another 6 months at the earliest.
Do you see any other storm clouds out there, Jerry, that we should consider? You know, we've talked obviously about PPE costs, rising food costs, as well as the rent issue. Is there?
Well,
anything
I
else
think
that-
I think what city of Dunwoody did, and I think there's some other cities that have done that as well, in granting up to $30,000 was the maximum amount allowed to restaurants for rent relief. They had to show in the application process what rent was paid from April through September of 2020. And the city was able to grant, I believe they've granted about $1.5 million in grants to various restaurants. And they've just opened it up to non-restaurants as well, a second round. They funded that with federal CARES Act money. So that has been a lifesaver for many folks, that they've used that money to pay the deferred rent. But there are a lot of folks that didn't qualify to apply for those grants. Those were not loans, they were grants, actually, no repayment obligation. Very, very positive that the city of Dunwoody did that. And we saw the city of Brookhaven, for instance, they granted, I believe it was up to 8,000, either $6,000 or $8,000 back to restaurants if they, to be used to offset the cost of their alcohol license. Well, what about the restaurant that doesn't sell alcohol? They weren't able to get that. You know, there's never a perfect answer, but for those, it offset the cost. That enabled people to stay open. Or there were a lot of people on having to make a decision: are we going to stay open for 2021? And getting that money in Brookhaven helped a number of people that I saw make the decision to stay open.
Okay.
And for full disclosure, Jerry, that money came from DeKalb County. So
okay,
we can thank the commissioner and the CEO and DeKalb that they received federal money, and then they dispersed a significant amount of that out to the cities, which did not occur in all communities. So we certainly appreciate the county's efforts in that. We have, you know, we're up to about $2 million, 80 different businesses. We're about to cut checks for the final 30 businesses. So that has been very helpful.
the patio improvement grants you did in Dunwoody was a huge help and an immediate help for us at the restaurant we have in Dunwoody. The problem with that I heard from other restaurant owners is that everybody wanted to dine outside and they couldn't find heaters. There was a heater shortage nationally. And but those who obtained the heaters and installed them have found it to be a lifesaver. And I really commend your department for masterminding that.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Starling or Mr. Seconder, do you have anything to add to that? Do you see any pressing needs in Dunwoody that some of your restaurants may have right now?
You know, our biggest issue that we hear is just trying to find enough space to try to get back to 100% capacity. You know, you can't run a business 70% of your revenue. Right. It's very, very difficult. A lot of our property owners did go to sort of percentage of sales for some time, but not all of them. They're all, you know, all of these property owners are governed differently. Some of the big REITs, you know, they're not getting relief from their loans, and so it's a difficult process. But we found those businesses that were able to sort of go to percentage of rent, percentage of sales, really helped them get through this. So they don't have that huge, you know, monthly lease on the top of them. So really they found the business and the property owner really are partners in that, right? The better they do. So one of the reasons we tried to help businesses expand their outdoor dining is just to get more tables so they could, because there's a lot of people who aren't going to go back inside until they feel 100% that you know, COVID is not a problem anymore. And we also think outdoor dining that's where we should go, right? Georgia, we can dine outside 9 months out of the year. if done correctly, maybe even a little bit more. You know, some people did the igloos, and
Yep.
so everything we can do, and we also think that creates a better quality of life, and that will continue beyond COVID. But we just think we got to get people back in the offices. You know, we've talked to a lot of our restaurants who are in perimeter, and they rely on the daytime population so much.
Right.
And until State Farm comes back, or Cox, or these other big companies, they're not gonna be able to get back to normal.
Yeah.
But the good news is everybody's operating. We have seen very few closures. I hope that we don't see another wave of closures, but we had 3 or 4 restaurants closed, but they were all national chains who had issues at the national level anyway.
Right.
And so it was more about that. They just saw this as the opportunity to close. We've seen very few local restaurants close. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that they're able to get through this.
Just a sort of a question outside of the restaurant business itself. Is anybody noticing difficulty for employees getting to work? Are the buses on time? Is that an issue for any of the businesses owners that you guys deal with, or even for you, Jerry? You know, is that an issue or not really?
No, we haven't noticed that being an issue at all.
Okay. Lately, I know Beaufort Highway relies a lot on MARTA for transportation. Is that a concern or not really?
No, not really. And I know that MARTA was doing some work with the Lenox Lindbergh and sort of, you know, that line, that north-south line, and they accommodated with free bus rides and things like that. So they were able to navigate through that.
Okay.
I've not heard anything.
Okay.
But I do want to, you know, Jerry's points are really interesting. You know, I was talking to Halpern Enterprises. They own Pine Tree Plaza and all those places. And same thing, and they've really tried to work. There's all different levels of degrees of relationships between landlords and tenants, and that's kind of adding to the complexities also. I mean, you have people that have never even spoken to their landlord and vice versa. And so now they're having to, you know, figure out how to advocate for themselves and, you know, really get plugged in outside of your brick and mortar. And that's been pretty tough. And so there's a real mental component to this that I wish we could talk a little, you know, more about openly, I guess, because it's been really tough, I think, from a stress level, particularly for, you know, restaurant owners who don't speak English. You know, a lot of them, particularly on Beaufort Highway, a lot of things are not in language. You know, we're talking about, you know, the big languages, English, Spanish, you know, but there's the third one's Korean, you know, and we don't see a lot of things being, you know, in language, you know, particularly with access to loans and things like that. So we'd like to see more of those, because I think a lot of folks, you know, the next generation, the younger folks are definitely ones sort of running things, right? But the decision makers are still the generation before, and a lot of them just they're stuck in certain cultural ways of thinking, and there's just so many different complexities to all of this. So I don't know, I just wanted to add that in there because it's just the mental strain of it all.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine.
Hey, this is Joe Seconder. I'll defer to, first of all, number one, I appreciate having a full-time staff member, i.e. Michael Starling, on board on our city that we've structured that focuses on business and economic development, that he's in there every day. So that's part one, because, you know, we're part-time elected officials. About the MARTA, early on in the pandemic, up where we live, MARTA shut down all of the bus routes,
Right.
all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very concerned about that as well. And I look at that for folks that, you know, work, that have to use that for transportation to get to the job, whether they work in a grocery store or retail or whatever, is that working where their employment center was.
Mhm.
And the way our MARTA bus lines routes had been set up historically did not really make sense, honestly, to our city in general. The way normal traffic patterns and normal way of getting around just worked. It was very obtrusive. Okay, now you got to go back to the Chambly MARTA station. You have to, instead of going, you know, it's much further, makes it more difficult. So recently, a couple of our council members have engaged with MARTA about, you know, looking at out of the box situation thinking about creating a hybrid route or some type of a shuttle or a circulating route. I'd like to make sure that that continues to happen. Michael, I don't want to put you on the spot, but have you heard an update about, what MART is if they're moving forward, engaging and discussing on that? Because we would need to.
I have not heard, received an update.
Right. So, Robert, I can get off with you one off on that, but I'd like to look at that. And then I have a couple other points for the actual restaurant owners and proprietors and operators, just in general, even before the pandemic. I don't want to stereotype, because they're very busy and focused on inside their door. So they look at what's happening inside their door and maybe their parking lot, and then that's it. And I would challenge restaurant owners and any retail owner to engage in the greater community, to engage with all of their other merchants, to if there's a local chamber of commerce, get involved. If you don't have a small merchants association for your shopping center, create one, and then you can all connect. I know up on, for example, up in Marietta on the square, they meet once a month. It's an informal association. They have coffee and they bring in guest speakers, but they're connecting and they're speaking to each other, not just what's inside after somebody walks in the door. So I think that can be very beneficial, especially when you think about these restaurants and thinking creatively of, so, we're going to have a pop-up, outdoor, all the restaurants in the area get together and everybody sit out in the parking lot or whatever, that one. And the last point is just for the takeout and making it really simple for people, and all the above choice, dine in, eat outside, or carry out, if versus the DoorDash. That carry on option, think creatively, use Google Forms, use something, make it simple and easy as you can, and make it so they're confident that their order is being placed in advance, that you have that mechanism, and that you have the connection. You don't have to go to a big chain like, say, Zoe's. They've got an app. You can say you're in the parking lot and you're here and arrived. But we have there's a restaurant in Dunwoody that did a really, really good job, but they use Google Forms to see where people are in the parking lot and to make sure that they get picked up their food. Nice. And another restaurant that I've gotten takeout from, they have a curbside pickup option, but the public doesn't know about it. Okay? So just try to engage with that public, make sure that they know about those options. There's free technology out there to help with that as well. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Okay. I did have one question. I want to kind of go back and ask, when you're talking about the office market, how concerned are you all about offices not really coming back 100%? Because we know that, a lot of people now, what we're doing here is Zoom, everybody's working on Zoom, working from home, and that seems to be, some companies are going to stay with that. So if you do not get that office market back, how concerning is that to your city as well as, the businesses?
Yeah, I'll take a first stab at that.
Okay.
That's the debate we've been having for a year, right? It started, and there seems to be two sort of schools of thought. One is that remote work is the way for the future, and that office will shrink. The other is that there's a possibility that office space will need to get a bit larger, because prior to the pandemic, office space was getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
Right.
Luckily, I don't work in that environment, but hoteling and coming into the office and basically you rent a space, right? You just have a little desk. That's going to go away, or it's going to sort of slow down because people are concerned about being right next to somebody. I think it's going to be somewhere probably in the middle. Businesses are not coming back until they feel very secure that the health of their staff is taken care of. And even for a city like Dunwoody, teleworking was not something we did. No one teleworked. We came into the office, or you working, out in the field. I think it's going to be sort of the flexibility of schedules is going to increase, and much more teleworking is going to occur, which I think is probably a good thing, because it's going to, our biggest issue prior to the pandemic was traffic and getting people in and out of the market. I think that that is no longer a problem. You know, traffic has gone away for this year. So if office doesn't come back, we're going to struggle, and our restaurants are going to struggle. We're going to see much less demand, but I think there's going to be a middle ground there where more people telework. Certainly some people will work remote. But I think everything I've heard, you know, this has been a year, and even at the city, we have employees who have never met other employees. They've started here at the city and no one knows who they are. And I think that whole culture and getting to know people, I think that is a really strong part of business. And so I think you're going to see sort of middle ground. I don't think we're going to see a huge negative to the office market. I also don't think you're going to see a whole lot of new office built anytime soon. I think certainly not in Dunwoody. I think we've got probably all the office we need for quite some time, but I don't think you're going to see businesses cut their demand in half.
Okay.
That's just me. We'll see though. Everybody's betting, right? It is the big debate.
Where do we go now? Yeah. Yeah.
My husband works for Rural Sourcing, and I think they're located perimeter area, and they have made they've taken this opportunity to really take a look at their corporate culture. And so they've made an announcement that they are putting employees first. You guys have been so productive at home. They've left it up to the employees. Either they want to come back or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that, to your point, Michael, I think there is going to be a middle ground to that. But I also think, again, it's that need of communication. It's that need of connecting the dots, even of what the impact is for other industries, and that really have made really, really, really deliberate decisions, and even locate their footprints to marketing to these office workers and whatever. So it'd be interesting to see how this. We've not seen. I mean, I still, I'm on Beaufort Highway all the time, and I still people that are coming in for lunch breaks, and where there's dining that is allowed. So I do, and people taking with their business suits out, taking business food to go. So I do see that I don't think it's stepped into Beaufort Highway too much, but.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, we are coming up on 10:30. I know we were scheduled for 11. Like I said, I thought, we're gonna have more restaurants here, restaurant owner here, but anyone have any parting comments, questions, anything like to say?
If I could, there's one other issue that I think I've seen in restaurants, and maybe Mr. Starling can address this as well, but the restaurants that serve alcohol. During the pandemic, what I hear from most restaurant owners is that their percentage, I'm talking about a typical full service restaurant that maybe was hovering between 20 to 30% of alcohol sales, probably closer to 20, low 20s, that during the pandemic, those alcohol sales have dropped to probably 5% if they're lucky. Because takeout, it's sort of restrictive, and people aren't dining in, and they're not staying in restaurants longer if they do, where I know, say, City of Dunwoody has allowed some takeout drinks for those who are strolling around the city and so forth. But the excise taxes that the city collects, the 3.5% on mixed drinks, my guess is those revenues have dropped considerably. It would be great if there would be, and I know there are safeguards you have to do for delivery of alcohol, but any additional thoughts or strategies where restaurants can increase their alcohol sales, because those are huge profit centers for small restaurants.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the bars itself, because that's a whole nother issue, but I'm talking about just restaurants where they've seen the food sales. If somebody's doing 70% of what they were doing before, but they're only doing their alcohol sales are down 75, 80% or more. Their food costs are way up and their profitability is way down. So the 70% of sales may not translate to 70% of profits, what they were making before. It's probably much lower. You know, so weather gets nicer and so forth, it would be, you know, you hope that with outdoor dining, people will dine in outside or, you know, dine on patios or what have you, and order more alcohol. But increasing, if there's a way to increase the ability, perhaps local laws that would allow discounting of alcohol sales to draw people into the outdoor dining. You know, I realize that, you know, that one day, at one time in this state, there were happy hours and things like that. Those would go a long way if they could be reenacted on a very limited basis to restaurants, not to bars, but just to restaurants, to allow further revenue stream during these times.
So I think a lot of that is going to be state controlled. Something that the local government wouldn't have an opportunity to do. One thing that the state has allowed and that Dunwoody allows as well is delivery of alcohol by restaurants. That occurred early on in the pandemic, that they were allowing that, and then the state put it in place, and we allow it as well. I do think that we can do a better job of marketing and letting people know that and exactly what the rules are. So I think we can do a better job of that. But we absolutely saw that when people were picking up, they were not picking up maybe the beer or the margaritas or whatever, and that was a huge impact. So the state did step up and made that change. So, you know, there's specific rules to it, but you can deliver alcohol with your to-go orders.
Gosh, the alcohol thing's such a tough thing because as a consumer, I mean, I've saved so much money not purchasing alcohol. And so I'm even wondering, like, the whole brown bag concept, right? I don't know. I mean, I'm ignorant in that world, but I went to a restaurant just in Roswell and they couldn't afford the you know, I guess the stuff to serve alcohol. And we're like, well, you're a Mexican restaurant with us, can we go to the liquor store brown bag it? So it's just one of the, you know, I don't know what those regulations, you know, are, but I also have, you know, this Chinese restaurant. She says that she pays so much money for an alcohol license, she barely serves it. Like, people just don't order it, you know, and perhaps that's, you know, a really challenging thing as well. But I don't know, a complex thing.
Yeah, it is expensive, and we may, depending on what we do with the remainder of our CARES Act money, and if we get new later this year, we might, it's not a guarantee, but we might pay everyone's alcohol license, because it can be expensive, especially full service. If you're serving, you know, mixed drinks as well, it can be very expensive.
She said it was $8,000.
Oh yeah.
Holy cow. Holy cow.
The city of Dunwoody has amongst the highest alcohol license fees in the metro area. And I know that because I've helped clients apply for them all over. It would be great during this to, if the fees could be scheduled, so it'd be looking at the percentage of alcohol sales of your total amount of revenue. If so, somebody that is selling more alcohol would pay more versus somebody that has a lower percentage. That would be a break that would help restaurant owners. So if I'm selling 10% and the guy next door is selling 30%, he should be paying more for his license. So you don't get in the brown bag. I don't think any restaurant owners really want brown bagging because they'd rather sell it and make the profit off that.
Yeah. But she's in Doraville. And that's the other thing is that, you know, local municipalities, we've got 3 of them running across Beaufort Highway. It gets confusing too. Like, what are the regulations? What do I do? Even in the beginning, some people would call up like, am I allowed to open or not? Because Chamblee was late in the game. I think it was Doraville and Brookhaven that went out first. Doraville, yeah. So just the overall communication pieces of it. People are, I mean, humans are humans, and it's been a lot to throw at.
Mhm.
Well, Commissioner Patrick, would you like to wrap it up, have some parting words?
Yeah, I would like to say thank you all for coming. It's a small group, but I sort of think we actually did some good communication. Lewis, I appreciate you. Jerry, I appreciate you coming on. Of course, Michael, Lily, and as well Councilman Joe Seconder. I really appreciate you guys. I know Chandra dropped out with us or from us, but we'll circle back with her and have another business sector that we focus in on. But thank you guys for your input. Michael, I would like to talk with you some more. Of course, Lily, you and I, we're going to be talking anyway. But absolutely want to continue the conversation. And Jerry, going to find your Mexican restaurant tonight.
You need to come up. They do a great job.
I'm gonna find out.
As a matter of fact, while we go to lunch, once the weather gets good, I'll take you to lunch.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, I've got to go. Thank you, though.
All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate your input, and Tara and I will start working and see what we can work on our end. We still do have some CARES money available, so these were some good suggestions that you guys threw out, and it may be that we work through the city, since District 1 is such a municipalized area, that you guys can handle the distribution. But let us talk. We'll get back with you guys. Okay.
Cool.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good
Have a
week,
good
guys.
weekend, everybody.
All right.
Bye.